Imagine reaching into your pocket, and there's nothing there. No bills, no coins. Not because you forgot them, but because they don't exist anymore. Every payment you make, every dollar you earn, only exists on a screen, a number, in a system you don't control. At first, it feels normal. Even better, faster, cleaner, easier. No counting, no waiting, no friction, just tap. And it's done. But then something subtle begins to change. Because cash isn't just money. It's something else. Something we don't think about until it's gone. This is what if, and here's what would happen if cash disappeared. At first, a cashless world feels like progress. No more loose change. No more ATM runs. No more cash-only signs slowing everything down. Every transaction becomes seamless. You walk into a store, tap your phone, and leave. No delays, no mistakes. Businesses move faster. Lines disappear. Everything becomes efficient. And for governments and institutions, it creates something powerful. Visibility. Every dollar tracked. Every transaction recorded. Every payment connected. Tax evasion becomes harder. Illegal activity becomes easier to trace. A system that feels smarter, more modern, more controlled. And for most people, nothing seems to change. At least not at first. 3. Twist, but money doesn't just move. It connects. And when every transaction becomes digital, every transaction becomes visible, not just to you, but to the systems that process it. Banks, governments, payment platforms. Because without cash, there's no such thing as a private transaction, no untracked exchange, no anonymous purchase. Everything leaves a trail, and over time, that trail becomes something much bigger than a receipt. Every purchase creates data: what you buy, where you go, who you interact with, how often, how much, and when. At first, it seems harmless, but over time, that data builds a profile, not just of your finances, but of your behavior, your habits, your preferences, your patterns. And once that profile exists, it can be used to predict what you'll do next, to influence what you see, to guide what you buy, and in some cases, to limit what you can do. Because when money is digital, control doesn't require force. It can be built directly into the system. There's also access. Because digital money isn't something you physically hold. It's something you access through systems, banks, apps, networks, and if something interrupts that access, your money is still there. But you can't use it. Accounts can be frozen, transactions can be declined, limits can be applied. Not just for fraud, but for policy, for compliance, for control. And suddenly, money isn't just something you own, it's something you're allowed to use. There's also dependency. Because a cashless system depends on infrastructure, electricity, internet, servers, networks. If any part of that fails, everything stops. No backup, no alternative, no way to pay. What used to be a small inconvenience becomes a system-wide disruption. Because when cash disappears, resilience disappears with it. Now scale that across the entire economy. Every person, every business, every transaction, flowing through centralized systems. At first, it feels efficient, but over time, it concentrates power because the entities that control the system control access to money, and access becomes leverage. Spending can be restricted, transactions can be flagged, behavior can be shaped, not always directly, but structurally. Because when every payment requires approval from a system, that system becomes part of every decision you make. And then something more subtle begins to happen. Behavior starts to change, not because people are told to change, but because they feel watched. They hesitate, they think twice, they avoid certain purchases, certain places, certain actions, not out of necessity, but out of awareness. And over time, that awareness becomes habit. Less risk-taking, less experimentation, less freedom in small decisions. Because when everything is visible, everything feels accountable, and that changes how people live. So what started as convenience becomes a trade-off: speed in exchange for privacy, efficiency in exchange for independence. Because cash was never just about transactions, it was about optionality, the ability to act without needing permission, without leaving a record, without being part of a system. And once that option disappears, so does a layer of freedom most people never noticed. At this point, something else changes: power. Because when all money is digital, Control shifts toward banks, toward governments, toward platforms. The systems that manage money now manage access, and that changes the balance, because instead of holding money directly, you rely on systems to use it, and over time, that reliance becomes permanent. So the question isn't just, is a cashless society more convenient? It's deeper than that. It's about privacy, control, resilience, because once cash disappears, it doesn't come back. And maybe the real question is this: if every transaction is visible, every dollar controlled, and every payment approved, how does that change the way people live?